Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
I'm so excited you've joined us again this morning here on Fearless Females. I have a really exciting guest today. We've got Amber McReynolds, and she is cool. Like, that is who she is. She's cool. She has devoted her entire career really to service, and it's sort of a public service, but I think the thing that was the most important and impactful to me is she's like, you don't have to be a elected official to serve. And she has served on the United States Postal Service board. She's served in the election space and making elections kind of more fair and transparent. She's a leader in this community, and she is a proud mama as well, which speaks to my heart. And so I think that the thing that I got most out of our conversation is just the idea that she went into her career wanting to serve, and she found a spot that she felt like she could make a real difference. Her grandmas encouraged her to be politically active and to vote, and they found that right to vote important in their life and passed that down to her. And she's taken that and kind of run with it. And she's added impact, she's added value, she's added her sweet spirit of service in whatever position she's been in. And I really got a lot out of this interview. So I hope you enjoy it the way I did. Let's get started. Good morning, Fearless Females. I am so excited. We've got a conversation with Amber McReynolds today. She is CEO, author, and board chair of the U.S. Postal Service. So I'm so excited to get to chat with you today, Amber, and get all of your best tips and tricks.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here, Lorie.
So my first question is my favorite, except for that now my stack of books is like so big that I think I'm going to have to take a month-long vacation to get through them. And I keep asking the question because I love it so much. What is your favorite book?
So this is always such a hard question for me because I have favorites for depending on the situation. But one of my favorites that I've read now in the entirety of my life is called Code Girls. And it's the untold story of the American women code breakers during World War II. So because the men were off at war, there was a call made by the U.S. government into institutions like MIT to find women that could break code. And ultimately, those women, they never have gotten fully recognized for their incredible work, frankly, probably solving and putting an end to the war, but their incredible work during the war to keep the rest of us safe and to ensure freedom for all. And so I found the book to be extremely fascinating because it's got a historical perspective in it. I think did a really good job of yet again showing how much women have impacted not only the history in the United States, but history around the world. And they're often sort of never get recognized for it, or their stories are never told. So that one's really cool. I will just mention another one that I'm actually reading now. It's called The NVIDIA Way, and it's about Jensen. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, and it's one of the incredible companies right now in frankly affecting the entire world in terms of technology. And so it's been fascinating to read about his rise in running NVIDIA, founding the company, and then now running the company, and just the visionary perspective that he brings to everything. So those are two that I would share and mention that I really enjoy for different reasons.
I can see this. I'm going to have to do audiobooks in order to get through these.
Yeah, right. Audiobooks are great. I've listened to a number of them when you're riding a bike or walking or...
Yeah, commuting to work. Yeah, I know. There's not enough hours in the day to get through all these great books. Thank you for those suggestions. I love it.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get started? How did you move to where you are today? What do you do? Like, tell me just a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a really small town in Illinois, rural part of Western Illinois. Modest means. My grandparents lived in town. I was very close to both my grandmas. And then my mom was a school teacher, and then she stayed home with us when we were born for a number of years, and then went back to teach. And then my dad was a lawyer, had his own law firm, and is, again, small town lawyer, not big time law firm in a big city, but a small town lawyer that, frankly, everyone in the community knew because he was often helping so many different people, and he served as public defender for a long time. And then he was appointed a judge, and he handled a lot of juvenile cases. Sorry about the dog barking. So I grew up in a small town, and, just the life of growing up in a small town, and I regularly talk to people that had similar experiences, is on the one hand really incredible. On the other, there's a complete lack of opportunities. Like, I had very quickly maxed out classes in high school. I signed up for everything. I mean, we all had to play every sport and be a part of every club because otherwise there wouldn't be enough people to fulfill all the things. So on the one hand, you sort of have all these really close relationships. We would get on our bikes and go over to our friends' houses and kind of be told to be home by dark, riding across town and things like that. I look at my kids' experience now, and that's not, the experience that most kids are going to have anymore because technology's changed things, safety's different, all those things. So it was an incredible experience growing up, and it shaped not only who I am, but also my work ethic, because I worked as soon as I could. I got a work permit to be a lifeguard, and worked, 3 jobs in college, waitress, bartended for a while, worked at a few different stores, volunteered. I didn't have a cell phone till way after college. So I worked really, really, really hard. I don't remember the last time I wasn't working, actually. Babysat even before I got a work permit, did work for my grandparents around their homes, worked at one of my friends' farms, detasseling corn. That was a big thing in the Midwest. So my work ethic is very much shaped by that sort of early upbringing. And I think just the needs of small town and rural communities is very different than what you hear about in the larger cities. And so that really shapes now me today when I think about my work in election administration, or even think about my work with the Postal Service, and in really everything else I do. I'm rooted in things that often get overlooked in rural communities, and a lot of it is my upbringing. Mm-hmm. The second, part of my upbringing, I mentioned this, I was very close to my grandmothers, and my life in service started really early. And my grandmothers, both of them, were extremely active in encouraging civic engagement, participation in elections, participation in women's groups that, one of them was a member of the Republican Women's Group, and another one was a member of the League of Women Voters. And, there was different ways they provided service. And my grandmother, both of them actually would always talk about their grandmothers and even their mothers not being able to participate, because it's really not that long ago that women got the right to vote in the United States. And so, listening to my great aunt, who actually was in high school with Ronald Reagan in Sterling, Illinois,
oh, wow.
Listening to the stories of all these women and how the lack of their inability or relatives of theirs inability to participate really shaped their energy around it growing up. And so both grandmothers served as poll workers. We would go visit them. We'd be able to walk over to the polling place and take cookies to them. My other grandma would have she was very active in encouraging just civics, and she'd always have flyers. During the 4th of July parade that she would host, we'd drop off flyers about how to register to vote or how to get involved. I had them in my little buggy with my dolls walking in the parade and would hand those out. So, I just, with my parents, my grandparents, both my grandpas we served in the military. My life in service really started early, and I knew that that I wanted to serve to make the world a better place. I didn't know exactly what that was. I didn't know, watching my dad be a lawyer, I was like, oh, maybe it's politics. And you sort of immediately think, okay, political science and law school and all these things. And then I look at my mom as a teacher. What life has taught me is, goodness sakes, there's so many ways to serve. And I have so much admiration for teachers, for instance, that are shaping the future of our youth. And I have so much admiration for, people that build companies to solve problems in the healthcare system or find cures for different ailments that people face. And there's just so many ways to serve. And I think we often, at least the attention is always on kind of the politicians and the elected officials. And goodness, I think Americans are just inherently rooted in service. And there are so many of us out there serving that aren't elected or making a huge difference that are not elected. And so I think that, that really is what has led me. I've never been an elected official, but I have served throughout my career, got into election administration more than 20 years ago now, civic engagement a little more than that a ways ago, but, did my undergrad at University of Illinois. Then I went and did grad school right away out of Illinois and lived in London, England for 2 years, and actually left on the first day of international flights after 9/11. So
oh, wow.
On 9/11 at home, couldn't believe my eyes. I had just graduated college that year, and I was set to leave and fly to London and move there for grad school. And so it was nerve-wracking, to say the least, and couldn't believe that tragedy happened in our country, and, left on the first day of flights. And I'll never forget that plane ride, because there were maybe 25 people on the plane, which is very eerie. And, so my experience in grad school was in an international setting with people from all over the world. I mean, there was a student that was being paid for by the Russian government that was in my class. There were students from different Asian countries. There were students that were from Arabic countries. Mm-hmm. And so after the world saw this horrendous tragedy of 9/11, and then additional conflicts came from that and all that, I was studying comparative politics and international space. And so when I came back to the United States, I continued to sort of try to focus, like, where can I have the greatest and the biggest impact in service that's also not partisan, because I had never been a member of a party. I had different family members that felt strongly one way or another, and I've always been a registered unaffiliated and an independent. And so I saw election administration kind of as an opportunity to leverage that strength as an unaffiliated or an independent person, because in my view, election officials have to be independent and unaffiliated in their role, regardless of their personal persuasions. And then I went on to work for the city and county of Denver. It was a horrible office when I started there. It was like one of the worst run agencies certainly in Colorado, maybe the country, and had a lot of inefficiencies. Voters were not served well. The laws were not written right in Colorado to best serve voters. So we set out to do a lot of things. We did a complete reorganization of the office, hired far more and wide-ranging, diverse backgrounds and perspectives. And, I was one of the youngest when I came into the office. I think I was the youngest. And I started trying to find talent right out of college that were different types of, whether it was technology or communications or others. How can we make our team more diverse in experience and perspectives? And then we really started working on the data points, because I think data, whether it be voting data or any other business data, consumer data, customer data, that should drive our decision making about how best to serve people. And so we started applying that service orientated data analytical approach to everything we did. If we were not making our elections faster, that was my acronym: fair, accurate, secure, transparent, equitable, and reliable. If our objectives were not accomplishing all of those things in a balanced way, then it wasn't something we were going to pursue. And so we applied that value stream to everything we did. And it was all about how do we improve service for every single voter, regardless of their party persuasion. And that really went along with what has now become my life mission. It was there all along. It just, it was hard to put it into words, but, I believe our democracy works best when every single American to meaningfully participate and have their voice heard and have their vote counted and not have it be difficult. Mm-hmm. Make sure they have the information they need and make sure the security and the transparency is built into the system so people trust it. That is what I've worked my whole life to do. And that has transcended into other things, including some of the work I've done on other boards and in other entities. And now as I continue in with my current company and my current role, helping a lot of different constituents and customers and clients.
So you were how old when you went to kind of be in charge of the voting process in Denver?
So I started in an operational role, and I think I was 25, maybe 25, 26. I think I had just turned 26, or it was very close. But I had already ran an organization. So when I went to grad school, I actually worked in Parliament while I was full-time at London School of Economics. I worked as a research aide in the United Kingdom Parliament, did a whole bunch of projects there, had worked in that environment for 2 years. Then I moved back to the United States, I was hired to run an organization that was focused on how to improve the efficiency of the judicial process in dealing with family violence cases, elder abuse, domestic violence, child abuse. Ran that for like 2 years and frankly realized that on the one hand, I was having a positive impact. On the other, it was a really tough subject matter that was a very stressful thing to work on. And so I, started looking for other opportunities, worked on a project in 2004 that brought me to Denver, Colorado, which is where I kind of, at the time I was thinking, oh, should I move to Chicago, Washington, D.C.? Where should I go next? And came to Denver for the first time when I was working for New Voters Project. And I, the minute I landed, I went on a long walk, ended up walking, 5, 6, 7 hours just around the city. And the mountains were just breathtaking. And I thought, this is the environment I want to be in. Like, this is aspirational. There's mountains. It's pioneer spirit. It's, it's all these things. And so I applied for an operational management role at Denver Elections, flew out, interviewed for it. I was hired into that role, served in that kind of manager role for the first 2 years. And then I was promoted to be deputy director. And then I was appointed as director of elections in 2011. So over a 13-year period, I had various, roles that led to me earning the director of elections spot.
And it's, if I understand right, there's really not like a college degree you're like, I want to be in elections, so I need to study like such and such. It's political science, or like, what is it?
Well, I think that people probably used to suggest political science, but when you're an election director, you have to be an expert in technology and cybersecurity and process improvement and data analytics, administration of very large budgets. We hire, we scale up to, at the 2008 election when I was running that, we scaled up to almost 3,000 people that worked for the office. So it's a very large logistical operation. So there's logistics. There's a lot of legal and regulatory environments. It's highly regulated industry. So you sort of have to be a jack of all trades. And luckily, I had done a lot of the data analytics, project management. A lot of that stuff was in my background. Policy analytics as it relates to legislation, all of that was there. But then I had a whole bunch to learn too, especially logistics related matters, some of the technology, changes. And frankly, the speed at which a lot of this stuff changes, especially on the technology front, means that election officials and that industry have to be extremely resilient. And you build that resilience up over time. Luckily, now there's a couple of universities, including the University of Minnesota, that they've now started to build certificates in election administration. And a lot of the current election officials go through those programs, or people that are aspiring to work in the field are starting to leverage some of those, training programs that are being built in institutions. And I think, certainly in the last 5 years, there's been far more attention paid to who runs our elections, for sure. And so there definitely seems to be more interest, good and bad. And it could be discouraging a lot of people too, from wanting to get in that stressful of a role. But it's, it's an incredibly important and awesome way to serve your community, to serve in that way.
Yeah, I actually didn't even know that was a thing that you could do. Like, I didn't even know that you could be an election advisor, that that's a job that you have. I think that's really awesome. I think it's cool that your formative experience, or those younger years and your grandma's kind of examples, really led you into wanting to take a place in making our elections more operationally well run and fair. So I think that's great. What, Amber, is the best investment you've made in yourself? Is there something you can look back on and be like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. It just really changed my life.
I keep thinking I should take some of my journals and put pen to paper, because there's been a number of moments, milestones, just kind of transformational for me, that have deeply shaped my thinking, my approach to things. Attending the London School of Economics was one of them. So that experience living in London, England, during that time in my life was, I can't say enough about how deeply positive, but also how tremendously difficult. I think it made me more resilient. I was away from my family really for the longest period of time than I had ever been away from my family. It was, I was working full time and going to school, really hard school. It was not a cakewalk. It was very difficult. But I had, just in my class, Kofi Annan, who was the UN Secretary General at the time, came and spoke to our cohort in the political science and comparative politics wing. Bill Clinton, former President Clinton, came and spoke to us. We had former prime ministers. I look back at that and think, gosh, I don't think I would have had that experience in most other places. And so that definitely is one. I think also just the experience of being in a different government environment has probably had a lot to do with my, work outside of, related to elections, but outside of it, on making sure that all unaffiliated voters can participate. So if you choose not to be a member of the party, you should still have the same access and same rights that people who want to be affiliated with either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party do. Unfortunately, our laws are not structured to be fair to you if you are not affiliated with one of the two major parties. In the UK, it was different. They have multi-party kind of systems. And so you do actually have representation if you're not a member of one of the two majors, and there's, more there. So I think that experience was deeply moving to me in a lot of positive ways, also a lot of ways that I had to become way more resilient about a lot of things. Just, not having my mom and dad on a phone call to say, hey, I, need help with this or whatnot. So it was definitely jumping in the deep end. And I can say that I was a lifeguard growing up, so I can, I understand things. So that one, I think the other investment, I really believe in continuous learning. So I've done a number of leadership programs. I one in Denver at the Metro Chamber of Commerce called Leadership Denver. Years ago, back in 2017, I was part of that program. 2016 into 2017. And I met some people that are now my lifelong friends. And I was going through a divorce, a really awful, horrible, something I wouldn't wish on anybody kind of divorce that year. And I do think that the people that I was in that program with, and just the ability to go to that program once a month and, be able to kind of put myself outside of the difficult personal things, but also I was running a presidential election for work at the time. So the whole year of 2016 and 2017 were really difficult. And so that Leadership Denver program gave me grounding in perspective and an ability to keep growing, even though things were really challenging. So I think those two stand out. COVID is another one that I think it impacted everybody in really hard ways. And then, I think the best investment I can make as a mom of two incredible children is the investment I make in them every day. And, everything I do for work is an investment in their future. And then I spend every extra dime I have trying to, make sure that they can achieve and accomplish all the dreams they want. So that's the third, very big investment I make on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's true. I've got 5 kids of my own, and investing in them is something that we do a lot of. Yeah, I see that.
And we don't talk about it a lot like we do. And like this is, our most important investment in the future. So.
And how interesting and nice that you can kind of see that direct correlation between what you do and work and how that's going to affect your kids and their future. I think that's a really important correlation to see and have. Mm-hmm. Did anyone ever give you any really bad advice? And did you take the advice or did you not?
It's hard to reflect on some of these things. It's even hard to repeat some of the advice that was bad I think bad advice can come from anyone. It can be delivered to anyone. But I do think that as women, especially in leadership roles, and I've had to experience this a lot in the workplace, even in government early on in my career, I in the interview that I had with Denver Elections, the guy that would eventually become my boss said, "Aren't you a little young to be applying for this job?" And on the first day of work, he asked me why I wasn't married yet and why I didn't have kids yet. And don't I want kids? And I was 25 or 6 at the time with my master's degree. And I was starting off in my career. And, I think those kinds of questions, not only are they questions, but they imply kind of a demeaning tone that's sort of like putting us in our place immediately. Right. And then, you get the advice a lot of, if you just lay low and don't create waves and, you'll be fine. And I got that a lot growing up through, the different early work engagements I had. And I think that on the one hand, some of those folks were probably trying to maybe they were passing along what they were told. I think there's sort of you sort of have a vicious cycle of bad advice sometimes. I also think that, we had the way generations, look in the country. Like I was born in 1979. Most states didn't allow women to serve on juries prior to 1975. Women couldn't get a loan for a home by themselves. Mm-hmm. So I grew up at a time when women didn't have, and still don't have the same access and same ability and same opportunity, which is the biggest part of it. So I think that all those points where I got bad advice, it was really because of a vicious cycle of what other people had been told to them. And sometimes I took it. Other times I found a different way to approach the thing. Most of the time that was the case. But, a lot of navigation of a lot of people's egos and some bad advice thrown in there for sure.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because you see that this is the way it's always been done. And so this is the way that it's supposed to be done. And a lot of times that's the advice that comes to you. And sometimes it behooves us to kind of ask, well, should it always be done this way then?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too that we're told, and I was told this a lot, figure it out. And so that's how I approach everything I do now. There's a lot of resilience and all of that. But it's also been hard for me to learn how to ask for help. when I needed it, especially when I had little kids and I had a big job. And, I'm not one to, I'm one to just figure it out because that's how I learned, right, to navigate a lot of this. So I think I always try, I'm like an eternal optimist, courageously optimistic, I guess is a good way to say it. But if someone's giving me advice that doesn't quite fit or doesn't sound right, I'm like, why are they, I always go to the why, like, where is this coming from? Why would they be offering that? And, a lot of it is, this is the way it's been done, or this is the path of least resistance, or this will create the least amount of drama, whatever it might be. So I think always paying attention to the why behind whatever advice is being given is really, really important for anybody kind of going into. And you don't have to constantly disrupt either. Like, you don't want to be in a constant cycle of just causing massive disruption all the time. You want to be very strategic about, what battles, where do I push back? How do I push back? Does this advance my vision or mission or what I'm working on? Or does it actually wreak havoc for, what I'm trying to accomplish? And, I do think we have to be, and that's always my advice to anybody I mentor now is be really thoughtful and strategic about, how you approach conversations where you might not agree with the advice you're getting, or it might, face that adversity of what do I really do here in this circumstance? Because constant disruption isn't good either.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable to remember too, that you do need to kind of think about why the advice is being given, and do you agree with that, or do you want to disrupt? And then pick your battles. I always tell my kids that, right? Pick your battles. Like, if it isn't going to serve you in the end, maybe don't fight that battle. Maybe fight a different one. So,
yeah. And the motto I've had with my kids, we early on, they started going to school at an early age, a Montessori school. And, we sat down, it was actually around the divorce time. I had said to the kids, we should have, a family motto. And they, well, what's a motto? So then I explained what that is. And, I said, I remember we had a whole conversation about, and in a simple way, but because they were little, 3 and 5 at the time, but our family motto still to this day is have courage and be kind. And I'm convinced that if you approach everything you do every day, then all will be well with those fairly simple pieces. And it's hard to do that sometimes, especially the be kind part to people who are not kind to you. And my kids, my daughter would get in the car when she was 5, I'd pick her up from school. Mommy, I was kind today with this. And she'd tell me about something, or she would say, so-and-so was courageous because of this. And it really became a thing. And now they're high school and middle school. And, it's still a thing. It's still something we talk about. They know exactly what courage looks like. They know exactly what kindness looks like. They know how to be kind. They know how to approach conversations in a kind way. And, so I think that is the way to try to approach some of these things too. And just the decision making of what advice to take or what decision to make as you go forward.
That's great. You ground yourself in your motto, whatever your motto is, and then say, does this advice or direction, does it help align and move me forward in this, what my core beliefs or core values, or is it taking me off the path? I like that. That's a really simple way of looking at things too, huh?
Yeah, I think adults overcomplicate things. So I try to go back. I'm like, what are me and the kids talking about these days? But because I do think that adults tend to, especially in politics or some business, even it just
finance
really ugly. Finance can get really ugly really quick.
What about a situation? I can think of 20 in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, if I knew then what I know now, I would totally do that differently. Is there a situation that you can think of, a learning situation where you're like, if I went back and did that with my knowledge, I would do it differently, and how?
Yeah, I think as we progress in our lives as professionals, if we're continuously learning every day, we're going to learn a lot really quick about things that we could have done better. So I've always tried to keep myself, even though it's kind of overwhelming sometimes and exhausting, you keep yourself in a continuous learning environment and be open to that, because it's also possible circumstances change and what you thought worked doesn't work suddenly. And that COVID is a good example of that. A lot of the work I do, a lot of states found themselves in a very difficult situation trying to run elections simply because of the policies and the laws that were on the books, or the model that they had that relied heavily on in-person voting in small spaces at churches and schools and things like that. So I think that if you can try to keep yourself in a fairly continuous learning environment, think about the worst possible case for either your business or your organization you may be running, or policy thing that you're working on, whatever it might be, constantly reevaluating is a good way to avoid regretting things or, wishing you would have done things differently. I am the first one to say, look, I'm never been perfect, never will be perfect. No one's perfect. And also no one has all the answers to solve every problem or to solve every challenge. And I think it's always really important for leaders to look for, oftentimes in the workplace, you have people that love to voice their opinions really quickly, and they'll give you all their ideas on solutions and all of that. I tend to look for the ones that aren't saying much or want to go think about it some more, and make sure I go back to them to say, hey, after you thought about this, what do you think? And I think when we don't do that, that's when we have far more regrets, because a lot of times we end up identifying answers or missing answers that, could have presented themselves earlier. When I look back over my work, I think that the regrets are a complicated thing for me, because I think on the one hand, when you make mistakes, you learn from them and you become more resilient. And it's hard to regret things, because I think you can fall in a negative cycle for doing that. But I think in terms of doing things differently, I served in government for 13 years. I often think, should I have stayed longer? Because I left like 2 years right before the pandemic. I sometimes think, should I have left earlier to go into the business world? Partly because my mother reminds me of this all the time. I didn't go to law school, so almost every holiday she brings that up. And so that is often on my mind once a year. I think about, whether or not I should have. In a lot of ways, I feel like I did. I bet, so much in the legal space with the work I do. But, I think there's all these moments, right, of, should I had children earlier? Should I have taken more time off when I, had my kids? Professionally, I often think about decisions that we made on the team. So, one of the things we did was that we implemented a flex work schedule pretty early compared to other organizations. And our sick time just fell to the ground, because people were making their appointments on Fridays or Mondays when they, and they loved being able to do 4 days at 10 hours, especially in the off election cycles. And so I often think, goodness, why didn't we do this sooner? Mm-hmm. We could have positively impacted our employees' lives earlier, right? So I think it's all those little things that you think, wow, this really worked out great. Why didn't we do this earlier? Mm-hmm. And then some of the negative things, I think you can always look back and, we used to do what we called SWOT. We do a big analysis after every election and literally comb through and find every little tiny thing that didn't have any impact on the outcome or whether votes were counted, but could we have made this process better? Could we have done the envelope design differently? How do we're constantly improving for the next time is all those lessons you learn from each instance. And so that's why I think it's so important to be in that continuous improvement mode, which most people are not in most of the time. It's once you get in a routine, you keep going. And I think it's so important to continuously improve and look for ways to improve, because nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah, I think that is really valuable too, is to do an after action. Like, hey, what happened? What went well? What didn't go so well? Can we fix that? If you could high five yourself for any past financial decision, what would that be?
Well, I mentioned I got divorced. We had owned a home. We sold that. And then I rented for a number of years as I went through the divorce and just kind of tried to decide where the kids and I would best be suited, and was so worried about making the right decision for schools and all of that. So 2 years ago now, I bought the house that we live in now, and I chose it because it has a really nice space for my parents on the first floor. They have their own like suite and lots of space in it. So they're spending a lot of time here, which means that I can help them. But I would say that at least in most recent times, the investment in this home, because it's dramatically improved the lives for my children, for my parents, for me. Kids are right by school. We have access to tennis and golf, two things that they love deeply. So our life, like just in the last 2 years, our life has just gotten so much dramatically better because of the investment in the home and some of the things we have around us now in our community, incredible neighbors, all those things. So I just, a lot of times we talk about real estate as just investments, but when it's your primary, when it's your home, and for me, it's primary, it's all, I don't have any other, like, I work in government, nonprofits a lot. I don't have a lot of homes. This is the only one. I am, proud I was able to work so hard to make it happen, and just the life that it has brought and given to my kids and us as a family is just something I'm really proud of.
I think it's important that you mentioned that, like, a good financial decision for you was also a good values-based decision. It was, it also had connotations of being in a good place for your family and leading to a better quality of life. So I think that's important that, as a financial advisor, I think it's important that you look at what your values are telling you as well as what the finances are telling you, and make sure you're living both. I'm excited for you that you have a cool house that brings you joy and your family joy. That's great.
Yeah, it's great. And I have a really long list of things that I've got to still get done on it, but that's probably going to be there for a while. I'm just, but it felt really good to be able to do that. And I'm still really proud that I'm able to make this happen for my family.
What scared you the most when you started out on your journey? And does it still scare you?
I would say failure is really, especially being a young person and growing up in an environment, like I mentioned, where the perspective about what women's role is or isn't was front and center growing up when I was in high school and when I was in middle school. And that all of what I saw and learned and understood growing up has been challenged throughout my life for a variety of things. I never ever dreamed I would or ever expected to go through a horrific divorce. Very, very painful situation. I just really difficult. Something I would never expect, to deal with. I think those kinds of moments put us in a place of, look, you survive or you don't. And certainly what I went through has made me a far more resilient person on a multitude of things. And, so I think I keep wanting to make things better for my kids. I want to leave the world in a better place than the way I found it. I will work every day to do that. And I hope that my daughter won't face some of the comments, won't face some of the threats, won't face the same kind of harassment, won't face the same vicious cycle of opinions about what women are or are not. Like, we should let women choose the path they want to take. So, I think all of it had a reason to, occur.
We've talked a little bit about some of the challenges you faced, but is there anything that you can think of that were just unique challenges that you faced because you were a woman?
Yeah, I think that, so I think I was paid less. I saw it, knew it, was told it directly. So like a lot of us, right? I know what that feels like. Women run companies get far less investment from private equity or wherever else than male run companies. That's clear as day. The United States Senate, not even, I think 20, a little slightly over 20% are now women. Congress, around the same. Women are 51% of the population in the United States, and the United States is 71 in the world ranked in terms of women's representation. We're 71st in the world. We're behind a whole bunch of developing nations. We're behind most of all of the top economies in the world. So it's, I think that certainly it is a challenge. And, I was told by both my grandmas, my mom, you're going to have to work 10 times harder, at least, maybe more. I think it's more. I think it's more like 100% more. I think that women are often told you can do all. If you want to work, you can work and have kids, no problem. That's not true. The systems are designed, even just you look at the school day. I don't know many people that can run a company and work and drop their kids off at 8:30 and pick them up at 3:00, because that's not what the workday looks like. The school day is never aligned with what a professional workday might look like. And frankly, there's all kinds of shifts and things outside of that. Nurses, doctors, people that work overnight shifts, people work in industrial sectors, technology. We are in a 24/7 world. And yet, we kind of continue to tell women, yeah, you can both have kids and which, look, I have done it, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
And I've been a single mom for a long time now without any, I don't have a normal parenting time split. So I'm full time on this. And it is far more difficult than anyone thinks when we kind of make these overtures. Oh, anything is possible. It is, except the systems are problematic to make that happen. And you do need help. You do need help, either that good childcare systems, good setups. You have to pay for a lot of that. It's not covered in the United States. We do very little here in the United States to support women and children and families. And it isn't just women. There's, I know a number of dads that struggle with this exact same thing. So, I think we really need to be thoughtful about how we think about the impacts of policies and regulations and even just the school day schedule on working parents, because it feels impossible sometimes. And, those are all the things that you have to kind of learn over time, but then we also shouldn't be accepting of it just because it's always been that way.
Yeah. I like that. I like that thought. And it does, I listen to some of my clients who are dealing with daycare, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, how much are you paying for that? It's sometimes for 2 kids, it's more than a house payment a lot of times. And that is just
at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to, like you said, be a working parent, whether mom or dad, and have it's a really hard, you've got to make some compromises sometimes. And that's hard to do. So I love that and hope that next generation will have a little bit of a leg up from us and maybe solve some of those problems for the ones that are following them.
Well, and I always say, if we can make the lives of working moms easier, just that, if you just focus on kind of that client base. And so I've been joking with a lot of the parents at school, gosh, when is someone going to create an AI tool that can read all of the emails and texts and notices and newsletters and everything from school and all the sports stuff and put it all together and summarize it so that it doesn't take so long to just go through all the information? And, I'd really think if when you think about when you build either systems, technology, what have you, and I always used to think about this for elections, if we build something that works for someone with the most difficult circumstances, whether that be transportation, accessibility, work challenges, whatever it might be, whatever we design that addresses the needs of someone in the most difficult circumstances everyone else is going to benefit from that design. And so I think, the same kind of thing applies here, that if we built more to support and design more to support those that have the longest schedules each day, are balancing a lot of things each day, everyone's going to benefit from it. And, that's why I'm excited on the one hand for AI and all the advancements, nervous on the other, because what is the design of everything going to be like? How's it going to impact everybody? But, there's a lot of promising technology that could solve a lot of stressful situations for a lot of us that work every day right now.
Yeah. What is the thing, Amber, that you are most proud of?
I am most proud of my daughter and my son. Full stop. It was always a dream to be a mom. They are kind, courageous, thoughtful, smart, loving kids. I just could not be prouder to be their mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've worked your life to make their lives better. Like, as you've taken these different positions, these different board positions and different company positions and stuff like that, it's always in the forefront of your mind. Like, how is this going to impact my posterity, the kids of those that I know?
Yeah, it's really, when you're a parent and you're thinking about the future for your own children, and then when you do work that has tremendous impact on the everyday lives of the American people, whether that be, on the election administration side and a lot of the work I've done there, or it be in technology, or it be, now I'm on the board of governors for the Postal Service, and we are the only entity in the entire world that goes to every door in every community in the United States every day, and 6 to 7 days a week. And, when you think about the building and founding of the United States, connectivity between constituents across this vast land, from business to customers, from customers to business, from government to, and vice versa. That is how our country was built. It was built on this incredible institution that's connecting the nation. And so it's everything I've done is sort of, it almost kind of ends up being with a purpose of universal service, whether that be in the mail for the Postal Service, or whether that be in the voting space. It has been my professional goal and mission to make the world a better place. And I've done that through the service where that really is rooted in this belief that everyone deserves exceptional service in what they're trying to get, either, in this instance for me, the mail, or in elections and voting. But the same applies if you think about businesses, like, exceptional companies and businesses think deeply and plan deeply around exceptional service for their customers. And, that's certainly where my energy lies, is how you build better systems, regardless of what you're, working on.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to your motto too, right? You talk about courageous and kind, like, sure. Courageous and kind service, that kindness, that idea of being of service to people in all the different areas and facets of your life. So I think that it's really well aligned with your core belief too.
Yep, absolutely.
Any advice for a young lady who's just kind of starting down this path that you're so successful at that would help her be where you are one day?
I think first, really think deeply about your personal mission and set some goals, like early, often. Really think about what impact you want to have, and then start identifying mentors who can bring light, maybe challenge some of your assumptions, bring positive advice, maybe some that have, if you want to have a family and also run a company, seek a mentor who's doing that very thing. I think often we sort of set goals, or a lot of people will set goals and mission and never test the assumptions, or test, is it possible? Can I actually get there through this? And really aligning with expertise, mentors, voices, even just personal friends, family, anybody that can help challenge your assumptions around your goals, I think is really important. I was not always effective at that. I had some really great mentors that I'm, again, still really deeply grateful for. But I wasn't always vocal with all the goals I had in mind for myself, and asking for their perspective. A lot of times I would be, talking to mentors about things that were right in front of me, not necessarily long-term goals I had in my mind about a family and how you balance that. And would you be able to, do all of these things? And what are the real challenges you're going to face? Like the cost of childcare, like the school day schedule, like the lack of access to sports and activities that exists in a lot of the public school systems, whatever it might be. I think developing and thinking deeply about what kind of life do you want? What are the ways you get there? And then who can help you with, the realities around that and navigating a path to achieve what you want.
Yeah, I like that. So that you kind of have this idea, but you're right. A lot of the questions that, you ask mentors are like, what do I do in this situation? Or what do I do right now? And finding someone that can kind of help you along the larger path. Like, hey, what does it look like to balance home and family? Like, what does that look like in your life? What have you found that's helpful? Are there things that I'm not thinking of? Sometimes around those bigger goals, we forget to ask those questions, and mentors and have examples of having done that successfully in their life as well. So they can be very helpful there. I like that.
Yeah. And ask for help. I think so many people don't take the initiative to ask for help. And that's really important to do because, or advice, whatever, help, advice, whatever it might be, I think is really, really important as you build that mission statement. And then like a vision board, vision out. My daughter actually just built a vision board ahead of school starting because we always do goal setting, and she wanted to do kind of pictorials of what she's, what her primary goals are. And I think that's always a great thing too, because it starts to bring to life what you might write down as goals or what's on paper. Like, what does it actually look like for you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have one that I'm not very good at keeping up, but it's a pin cushion, one of the bulletin boards there. So I take my pins out and put new things up when they become important and take things down when they become less important. So it's kind of a vision board in action there. So I love that. I love that idea of just thinking thoughtfully. I think there's time to work in your business. There's time to work on your business. And I think you have to have time to work on you too, or else you're never going to make those goals and visions that you have for yourself, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Well, thank you so much, Amber, for your time today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you giving us all this insight. And if I have a young lady who wants to ask some questions, how does she get in touch with you?
Well, a couple ways. So I actually have a website that talks about it. It's sort of a profile website. It has a lot of the projects I've worked on and different things like that. And that's always a great way to get in touch. There's a contact page on that. And then I can share my email with you as well, Lorie. I think you've got my email and you can certainly pass that on. Another one is LinkedIn. Like I actually read the messages on LinkedIn that people send me, even if they're like cold calls, and I respond and try to, help and engage where I can. So, in fact, I've had a number of people that went to students at University of Illinois reach out to me through LinkedIn. So that's always a good one because it's pretty accessible and easy to reply there.
Perfect. Well, I will add those resources to our show notes. And thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lorie. Take care.